a year and a half ago. So a little bit of backdrop. So again, there's the breakdown of the department, both in staff, and we also serve as staff to 4 different committees and commissions. And actually, it's kind of 5 now because the Economic Development Commission wears 2 hats. And so there's really technically 5 commissions now that are under this department. So a lot of work goes in supporting that. Why is it doing that?
We don't know.
How long have we had these things?
You know, I used to blame it on Sam, but he's not here now, so I can't do that.
Yeah, we can.
Okay, that works. So good segue into this slide. So we did add 2 new positions last year. One was a permit tech, which is helping both building and planning, and an economic development specialist that's helping in a number of areas that we'll get to a little bit later. And we also had changes in 3 positions. So we had some turnover in some positions, and we also added some new positions. We expanded code services by with some personnel changes, a new database, a whole different proactive approach to weed abatement, which I'll show you some photos of in a little bit. And we also took on parking enforcement. And the historic preservation duties transitioned from, they were sort of saddled on with our administrative assistant, and now they're part of the economic development specialist duties. So we'll start off again, kind of a 3-part presentation, 3 different areas. Start off with code services. Really, our goal of our code services folks is to work to get compliance. We try not to write citations. We try not to get people to court. You know, that does tend to happen sometimes, but we try to avoid that at all costs. We try to work with people to help them come into compliance. We work with property owners. We work with homeowners. We work with business owners. We work with tenants. And really, we're out there as a resource trying to you know, through enforcement, but we're trying to help Dallas be clean and tidy as much as we can. So here's just some examples. This is the one area of our department that, you know, the pictures definitely speak 1,000 words of some of the stuff that we see out there. This is just kind of an example yeah, this is one of the worst. You know, we see more of this than we'd like, but this is certainly an example of a lot of work that needs to be done. But there's kind of a before picture, and then there's an after picture. And again, it's not perfect yet in this case, but through working with this property owner, you can see that we've made a lot of progress from where it was.
It's a single family residence.
Yes. So yeah, so it took us 10 months, you know, just to make that amount of progress. And sometimes these things take years. One of the big things too that I noted in our changes and accomplishments this year was we changed databases. Data is really a big component of this function because we need to be able to effectively track these cases out in the field and back in the office. And we struggled trying to find a tool that would serve us well. And so we used to use what was called an LEA reporting system. The biggest challenge with this one was that it was solely tied to the office. And so when a code services staff member was out in the field, they had to take notes and then come back into the office and then transcribe them and upload pictures again. And it just added a whole lot of extra staff time. And so we were trying to get away from that to allow our staff to be a lot more efficient in their work. So then we switched to Acela, and the main reason we switched to Acela was we already own it and we use it primarily in building inspections, but it has a module purportedly that works for code services. But again, what we found was that it did accomplish some of what we were after, but we had a lot of issues with it out in the field, and so it wasn't a good solution. And so we eventually arrived at a product called Comcate, which is really a designed from the ground up web-based software platform that allows us to accomplish all the things we need to do, and staff is very happy with that. So we think we found our landing place with software for now, which is good. So here's just a little fun little example of some of the cases and types of things that we deal with. And there's a lot of things on here, and some of them may surprise you, some of them may not. I'm not going to read them all, I'll just have fun bringing them up. But a lot of different violations and kinds of violations that we see out there in the community. Um, and the animal excrement. That's my favorite one. I saved that one for last. So. Shopping carts, we deal with a lot of shopping carts. We try our best to get the store owners to take responsibility for them, but that doesn't always happen, or not, it doesn't happen as quickly as we'd like. So we end up accumulating them at the city yard sometimes. We got abandoned furniture as
You
well.
patch them up and then take them where they belong every so often.
Well, we try not to because we don't want to set that precedent and make it easy for them to do that. So we really try to get the stores to do that. And usually they're pretty compliant. There's only one bad actor in the community most cases. The rest of them are pretty compliant. Code Services also supports our planning and building functions by being out in the field and noticing when things are being done probably without permits and just checking back in and say, hey, I noticed this construction project going on. Is there a permit for that? And if there's not, then we can begin corrective action on those. There's just a couple examples there. One of our biggest wins
Charlie?
this year. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I have a quick question.
Sure.
With regards to unpermitted building construction, is there someone from your office? I kind of am assuming that there's not someone from your office that wanders the street looking for these, and it's more complaint based?
Correct. Pretty much, I would say a high majority of all the work we do in Code Services is complaint driven.
You need a lot more staff to do it.
Yeah, one is just a resource issue. We don't have the resources. The other is that's the culture that we've been operating under. You know, certainly if the council wants to go a different direction with how we do Code Services, we could explore that. But the direction that I inherited, at least, was it's a complaint-driven process, and the culture of the community is that's what we want to see.
So are there other cities our size who approach this differently, and I don't want to say like wander the streets looking for problems.
What you're talking about is really being proactive versus being reactive, I think.
Thank you.
And I have not done that research, although it wouldn't surprise me that there certainly may be. Again, it's a very much a political culture issue as far as I'm concerned on how you want to approach that.
But if our neighbors are seeing something that's concerning to them, then that's what we're waiting for is probably not the right term, but that's what prompts your office to make a step.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. If we chose to be proactive with the resources that we have now, we would be constantly behind, without a doubt.
But really my question is less about the culture that we have made the decision here in Dallas, and more, is this something that other cities do?
Do Code Services at all, or do it proactively?
Yeah, so I can speak a little bit to that. I would say most cities of our size operate in the same similar fashion to what we do.
Okay.
Just because of the resources that you need to be able to be proactive in code enforcement, right? When you get to cities, I would say between 75, 100,000 plus, which there aren't that many of them in the community. They may have more robust Code Services teams. Where you have 8 to 10 to 12 people going out and being more proactive in this, but even then it's usually centered around programs, right? Like they want to tackle a certain issue, and so then the team will be very active on that issue, not all code enforcement. And that's how I've seen it happen in other cities, especially larger cities. When they are proactive, they're proactive on a certain topic until they feel that topic's been resolved or at least addressed to the degree that they think they're going to address it, and then they'll move to another topic. And so they'll kind of tackle it topic by topic or issue by issue. So I'd say doing reactive code enforcement, right? You're really addressing the issues that the community cares about, right? They see as a problem, and so it's a good way of doing it. Here, I would say that having 2 Code Services employees full time for a city of our size is probably unique. That's more than most cities, and we are proactive in the sense that if we're out following up on a code-based complaint, and there are 6 other people that have that same issue within the neighborhood, we're proactive in that regard, right? So we'll not only address the one issue that we got a complaint about, but we'll address the other 5 that are nearby. So our Code Services staff are trained to be proactive to address a neighborhood issue, because what happens is if the person you're enforcing on, they look outside and they see 5 other people doing the same thing, guess what? We're going to have 5 more complaints that we're going to have to address anyway. So we're proactive in that sense.
Great.
I guess what you're really saying is if they spot something when they're out doing their job, they'll deal with it, but they don't go out and look at it.
Correct.
Councilor Briggs?
I actually heard if they spot something that they've been called to, that was like that, they would address those other 5. But if they drove by 6 shopping carts every day without a complaint, would they respond to that?
So they do. So right now we're proactive on a couple of topics. Shopping carts is one we're always proactive about, right? Because that's just something that we really don't want to encourage in our community, is abandoned shopping carts. So whenever we see those, we identify them, we pick them up. Well, we identify them, we call the grocer or the company that has responsibility for it. We say, hey, come pick this up. It's at this location. If they say, hey, we don't have the staff to do that today, then we'll take it to our yards. And we'll keep it there, and then they'll come pick it up afterwards. So shopping carts is one issue that we're pretty proactive on right now. The other is graffiti. Very active on graffiti. We've had over 100 cases in the last month, just individual cases of graffiti in Dallas. And so there are a few different groups out there that are feeling that it's okay to spray paint on our facilities, in private property, public property in town. So we're very active on that right now. Our code services staff are going above and beyond. They're actually cleaning off graffiti that they find, if they're able to do that. They love magic erasers. It's great. It gets that graffiti off in most cases. And so they're being very proactive on that topic. So every once in a while, even in Dallas, we'll be proactive on certain topics. But for the most part, it's, again, complaint-based driven. We will, yes, address issues specifically around what we're being called to complain. If it's like an abandoned vehicle, we'll look for other abandoned vehicles. If it's a basketball hoop in the right of way, we'll look for other basketball hoops. But it doesn't mean that if we also see, illegal construction activity going on next door to where we're doing a basketball hoop, we could also enforce on that. It just depends if they're seeing that, and particularly life safety issues, we want to address those right away, so we're proactive in those.
Right, yeah, if there's any imminent public safety issues at play, like hazardous waste or something spilling out on the street, those are things that we'll address right away. Sometimes, honestly, it just depends on the daily, weekly workload. I mean, do they have the time to follow up on a whole bunch of new cases that they were already, backlogged on the ones that they're getting? Because the complaint ones will have the highest priority normally, so they want to make sure they address those first.
Cheryl?
I had a question kind of going back to the before and after picture
Mhm.
of all the stuff that's in the side yard and
We'll
all
go through
that
all these again.
all the junk and stuff. You don't really have to go back there, but I'm just wondering, that's impressive. And I'm wondering, you said the city works with the homeowner to get all that, or the person living at the place. Does the city also help financially someone clean up, or do they?
We don't have a program to help someone financially. We will do abatement if we need to, but we'll expect repayment on that through a lien or an abatement or something like that. But we've never budgeted for a program to do sort of a hardship investment sort of a thing.
When you say you work with people, what do you do?
It's really about relationships and just staying after it. I mean, visiting every week, saying, hey, we'll give you 2 weeks to get this done, and then check back again in 2 weeks. It's like, great, you accomplished that. Now let's see what we can accomplish in the next 2 weeks. And just really, a lot of it is just being patient.
Yeah. If they came in and offered like a trip to the dump, or, I don't know.
I mean, there's been cases I know where Brian personally has, helped out, to help, mitigate some issues, and other volunteers in the community have stepped up to do that. That's pretty rare, though.
That's a big difference.
I've always wondered, we do have people out on the sidewalks every month, they're meter readers. And if they see something marginal, they could just write down an address at the end of the day, say, here's something to look at when you have time. That might be a possibility.
Which meter readers are we referring to?
Water meters.
Oh, okay.
Because they're out there every month, and they could probably identify some pretty bad sidewalks for you too.
Yeah, we're trying to go away from meter reading with our electronic meter systems.
Yeah, I didn't know we even had meter readers still, honestly.
We still go out and read it every once in a while.
Okay.
Something for most of the counselors to know. You guys know how easy it is to report an issue? It's just on the web page. It says, how do I? And you click on the web page, and then it's a drop down list and report an issue or anything that you can imagine. And then under the report an issue is graffiti and all these different things. And then there's another. So it's really pretty simple to report, and it can be anonymous.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up.
Check the box.
Thanks for bringing that up.
And I've had a person say, they called in and were treated with respect. The reason I was asking, Charlie, is because there was a situation in another city, not here, very clear, did not happen here, where there were people complaining that there were just code enforcement people wandering around complaining that my grass was too tall. And I just want to make it really clear that that is not what we're doing, unless, of course, it is, and I like your words, an imminent public safety
Yeah.
threat.
Now, parenthetical, we are a little bit different with weed abatement, and I was just getting into that, and so we'll see if that
Before we-
addresses you.
Counselor Shane.
Yeah, before we change subjects, again, on this issue of spotting, being proactive when you spot something that's a hazard or a danger, does that include certain types of construction?
Well, again, if they're out there and they see something that looks like it's not permitted work,
You
they
know,
will.
like that guy who was chatting
Yeah,
in your slide,
right.
who's building a
Mhm.
second story where he shouldn't have.
Right. But again, it's only if they're already out there in that area. They're not going to just drive around the community looking for problems.
No, I understand,
Yeah.
but you said that when they do happen to
Yes.
spot something that's a hazard,
Yes.
that you'll be.
Yeah, and we're fortunate that one of our code services specialists has a background in building inspection, so she knows the code and she knows what to look for, so she's pretty good at that. And we're just fortunate to have someone with that background.
That's great.
Yeah.
And we're also benefit from having code services staff within the Economic and Community Development Department, right? So there's really quick communication and contact, staff meetings every week where the code services staff are engaging with the building officials, and so there's really good communication and advantages to having them all within that same department.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so let's talk about weed abatement, because we really do have a proactive approach to that we started this year, which helped out immensely. The progress that we made with weed abatement this year compared to previous years was pretty impressive, and I was really happy with what the staff did. And so they started off actually dividing the city up into quadrants, or maybe more than, I think quadrants is 4. There may have been more than 4, but sections of the city. And they literally were driving all those neighborhoods, just looking at every address and looking for potential. And this was done like in February, March timeframe, just before things really started growing and taking off. Because if you've lived in Western Oregon long enough, you know that if you miss that first opportunity, it gets out of hand really quickly. And that's what we found in previous years, that we were always behind. So we try to get ahead of the curve a little bit, and actually we're out there identifying property by property potential vegetation issues. But again, as it says at the bottom there, we were also not overlooking other potential code violations as well. So we sent out hundreds of letters this last spring to property owners, and it really made a difference.
You can do that again.
We plan to do that every year. And again, I credit Brian to that. That was his vision. He's like, we got to get this under control. And I think we did a much better job this year. And so that is our intent, is to continue that process. And I think over time, we can probably back off, because we won't need to be quite as vigilant on it if the property owners understand what they need to be doing. So again, here's just some examples. This is what we see in early spring. And again, if you wait to, the thing with the weed abatement processes, the vegetation grows so quickly that with all the noticing time and everything else, you run out of time really quickly. Before you know it, you have a hazard on your hand. And so it's important to be really quick on this. As Brian mentioned, up until relatively recently, graffiti was not a big issue in Dallas, but ever since about mid-December, it has just gone crazy. And we're spending a whole lot of time photographing, documenting, contacting property owners, even doing some of the abatement ourselves, as Brian mentioned. The one unfortunate thing about graffiti, so let's just say your house gets tagged. Unfortunately, you're the victim, but you're also the property owner and now in violation of a code violation. And so it's an awkward conversation we have to have with the property owner who is victimized, who by a criminal essentially creating a property crime. But that's unfortunately how it has to go. And sometimes we're the victims as the city, and so we've had our own facilities routinely tagged as well. So we try to work with the police department to make sure these things are documented, that they can do what they need to do to catch the perpetrators.
Charlie?
Yeah.
I see one of the graffiti looks like, and I only see a piece of it, so I could be jumping to conclusions and making a inappropriate conclusion. But that looks like a swastika symbol there. Is that what I'm seeing underneath the weird happy face?
It was covered up in 15.
That is what it looks
So
like.
that's
yeah.
what it was.
Yeah.
And then there, one of the rest other was an obscene.
Really?
Oh, the
Okay.
part that's not visible?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If
Yeah, this is probably the rated G, mostly maybe PG,
is.
maybe PG-13 version of some of the stuff that we see out there.
Well, I walked under the bridge and saw that and asked Brian if I could paint over it, and I painted over it.
Thank you.
Nicely done.
Because
Thank you.
We didn't want it there, and then we also chastised 2 individuals that were in the area. Didn't have proof, but it was very, very fresh paint.
Oh,
So it is important, even more so than weeds, that this get abated very quickly. And so if you ever come across, if you see graffiti, please contact us, let us know, because graffiti can spread like wildfire once it's left out there, and we don't want that.
Well, it's the broken window syndrome.
Oh, exactly, yeah.
When it becomes present, oh, it's okay, let's do it, yeah.
Yeah, it's like implied consent.
Hey, Charlie.
Yes.
Outside of covering this back up, what are we doing?
Well, from a code services perspective, that's all we really do. I mean, I guess your question maybe might go over more into the police category in terms of investigation and tracking cases and those sorts of things to lead to prosecution and arrest, but I can't respond to that.
Tom, did you have a comment?
Sure, I do that. 2 parts there, but one thing just to have real quick while I'm thinking of it. If you're out on a walk or something like that and you see some paint can laying around or something, please let us know about that could very well be a piece of it. But yeah, we have officers that have got 2 different leads on a set of suspects that they're working on. And what I found the other night at shift briefing is that we've got 2, 3, 4 different officers working different cases and different information. So this morning I assigned one of our sergeants to, we assigned one of the sergeants to coordinate this project, and he's put together all the cases we have right now, giving me a report here in a couple of days on how many we have, where they are, looking for patterns in location, looking for patterns in time, checking, we've got some video clips of potential suspects, and we already checked the school district, and other folks there recognize any of them, we reached out to several school district, independent law police department, seeing some other information over there, looking at retail that sell paint, so we did everybody, so we're looking at different things there. But I just asked one of my sergeants basically to take this thing by the horns and get all the information together, make sure that we're not missing something, probably communication opportunity to work in different shifts. But in conjunction working with Charlie's folks, kind of coordinate that around. So this happens over the years. It happens now and then, cyclic, and this is probably the biggest push we've ever had at one time. But we'll get it resolved in just a matter of time.
Following up on that, actually following up on the combination of what you were both saying, talking about the fact that we're in what's the word, there's a spasm, a lot of it happening right now, can't think of the right word, but yeah, an outbreak, if you like. And you mentioned coordinating, or at least talking to other agencies. Are Independence and Monmouth experiencing this at the same time we do, or does it hit different places at different times?
I haven't heard of it, but that's one of the things I asked him to check and see if other agencies or other areas are having some of the same stuff. We could just have a core group of half a dozen kids running around doing a project here and there. It very well be with our agent associated with else. We can just meet your thing.
That's what I was wondering. Does it tend to be localized like that, or do you see it on a broader spectrum?
It usually is, in the past anyway, historically, it's a local little group of kids that decide they want to grow up with something and they do it for a while and they big problem for this problem. We had something several years ago where they were doing some real minor, just going through cars, they were left unlocked, they weren't breaking anything. And we had tons of them over a period of several weeks. It was ridiculous. And we finally pulled the reserve officer in and we put we did some analysis on where things were happening, put people out, and we actually put reserve officer on my car and he stuff like this, we decided to break the car. So we caught him and tried to make it so we did it down. But it depends. But one of the things he's doing is looking into the other agencies to see if they're having something. So.
Kirsten.
sorry, I must steal your time. Tom, do we have a way to track or I'm sure you're documenting, but to track the different tags and see if we can identify if they're coordinated with a larger group?
Sometimes, not so much really a larger group, but some of them are associated.
Okay.
And I'll just add to what Charlie, as we segue back to him, we take photos, code services takes photos of every, incident of graffiti they have, before they try to clean it up or before they do their casework. So we do have photos of every documented case in Dallas. So
You
that,
can spot similarities when they happen.
right.
All right, I'll move on from graffiti.
Moving on.
Another issue we deal with occasionally is unpermitted work in the right of way. This doesn't happen very often, but when it does, it gets very complex and very expensive. Working with property owners to sort of undo the work that they did illegally. These are just a couple examples here. So here's your top 10 list of things that we did in 2022 by case numbers. You can see all the way from parking down to failure to get a permit. So a lot of, and these are each, there's a lot of cases there. I haven't totaled up this entire number, but it's a lot. And it's not surprising that parking, at least for me, that parking is number one, because, every time you cite a car for overtime parking or illegal parking or abandoned vehicle, there's a lot of parking related things that we deal with.
So you have signs up there. Is that campaign signs part of that?
Yeah, and just other illegal signs. We've had occasion, both in residential neighborhoods as well as commercial areas, where illegal signs have
I've seen
appeared.
a lot of for sale signs on the parkways.
Yeah, sometimes it's the garage sale signs too, or just illegal signs that are posted up on a pole, a public pole, that we have to take down.
So
Yes, Michael.
of the 218 on number 2, obnoxious vegetation, is that every time a letter is sent out, or is it an actual,
No, those are individual properties, individual cases. So those
right,
would.
but I know you get letters go out, but is that one
So
of
those are violations. So that's not that's not the proactive letter that we send out saying, hey, it's the time of the year you need to cut your grass, it's tall. This is, hey, we've already sent you that letter and you haven't done anything about it, now you're in violation.
Yeah, these are all violations, correct. Thanks, Brian. And these are our two folks. All right, we'll move on from code services to planning. There's the purpose of what planning is all about. I think most of you probably have a pretty good understanding of what city planning is all about. It's really about, compliance with our comprehensive plan, our development code, or zoning ordinance, and really, everything that gets built out there in the environment of the city limits, in theory, unless it's done illegally without a permit, should come through our planning staff. Planning Commission is the body that is the quasi-judicial body that oversees the planning work. When I put this presentation together, we had a vacant chair position because Councillor Shane moved up the ladder, if you will. Theoretically, yeah, we'll see, right? That position has now been filled by John Swanson, but there is still a vacancy on the commission as a at-large member. So we do still have, and trying to remember now who got Andy's the new vice chair. That's right. Thank you. So that's how it shakes out now. So basically, those two names just moved up a notch, and we have John and Andy as the chair and vice chair. Still have a vacancy on the commission. This is what the commission does. There's 7 members. There's 6 right now, but there will be 7 when we fill that position. They're the land use decision-making body for the city. They really have a lot of authority and power, if you will. No different here than in any other city, but it's an important body, and you really want good people on that body because they make your lives easier, ideally, if they're doing their jobs well. As a former planning commission chair, yes.
Just momentarily, sort of an aside, but relevant to how important it is. In Oregon, as we know, land use is both a hot button and the third rail par excellence. And if there's one thing, this comes from 12 years on the planning commission, if there's one thing you would really like in Oregon, that you would really like your city attorney to be an expert in, it's land use, and we are extremely blessed in that.
Yes, we are. Thank you.
Our city attorney spent 3.5 years in charge of DLCD, and you don't get much more experience.
And I can tell you, I'm very grateful.
We're really lucky.
And I'm very grateful to that as well. And Lane is awesome at attending all of those meetings and then some. So thank you for calling that out. So again, this is kind of a little bit more into the weeds, so to speak, with how we deal with land use applications. And so there's 4 different types of land use applications that come our way. I won't go into all the details of those, but just know that there's 4 different types. And it's really only the type 3 and the type 4s that go to the planning commission. And the type 4s, of course, will go all the way to the city council. And so depending on what the application is and how complex it is where it fits into that structure. All right, so here's just some stats from last year in terms of different kinds of land use applications that we saw. Roughly 100 different land use applications went through our offices in 2022. Pretty similar numbers to what we saw in 2021, so not a lot of change in this one at all. You'll notice probably the biggest number on there, I think, well, second biggest number is pre-applications. One of the things I think we do well, we're still improving the process, but is we do sometimes they're required, sometimes they're voluntary, is we do pre-application meetings with the applicants where we have them come in and meet with city staff, and we bring in engineering and fire and building official just to sit down with them and to try to make sure that everybody's got a good understanding of what their project is and what they need to do before we begin the formal application process, and that's very helpful. Again, just some more stats for you. The top one there talks about the subdivisions that we've seen in the last 2 years. I decided to just do a 2-year report on that one. And then we've only had 1 application for any multifamily development, and it was only for 9 units. So we know that we'd like to see a lot more multifamily, higher density residential development in Dallas.
Technically, there's part of that 113 is multifamily.
Is it?
Yeah, Highland Glen.
Oh, Highland Glens too? Okay.
Has 5 different apartment buildings on it.
Okay. Thanks for the correction. All right, that's it for planning. Planning's not all that exciting visually because it's planning, right? So we'll get into the historic preservation. This is an element that is now, like I mentioned earlier, shifted over to our economic development part of the House. And it also has its own advisory commission. It's written into the development code. There's the 3 members that currently serve on the advisory commission. But before I go too much farther, I wanted to acknowledge this wonderful man who did so much work for the city of Dallas. He also served on the Landmarks Advisory Commission, was also very involved in the Downtown Association and whole lots of other things, including the Rotary Club here. We lost Rich to a battle with leukemia a few weeks back, so he's no longer with us, but his memory lives on, and if you had the opportunity to ever get to know or do anything with Rich, consider yourself blessed. I had the opportunity in crazy days of 2021 of manning the city booth with him, and at that time we were really pushing out the concept of forming a historic district, and I just turned over the whole thing to him because he was so passionate about it, and he was so interested in talking to citizens about local history. It was awesome. He was a great asset.
I have to weigh in on that. I'm sorry to be talking so much, but Rich was one of those people that you wish you could clone and have 100 of in your community. Doesn't have a high profile, doesn't spend time in the limelight, but just is always involved in something and working hard and putting in a lot of hours in something that's going to make the community a better place. And he did that forever. I mean, when I first moved here 20 years ago, he was the manager of the chamber, and we'd be here for half an hour listing all the ways in which served and made this a better place to live. So I just have to piggyback on what you said.
He also had a twin brother.
Yeah,
There's 2 of them.
right.
Really? I did not know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Despite his advanced years and ailing health, he was tireless. He really was, up until right at the very end. Anyway, so as I mentioned, the Landmarks Advisory Commission is actually written into the city's development code. We're also one of a number of cities in Oregon that's considered what's called a certified local government, which is a great status to have because it allows us to get grants from the state. One of the things we're doing with those grants right now, as I alluded to a moment ago, is forming a National Historic District in the downtown. You'll hear more about that throughout this next year. Commission only has 3 members. That's what's written into the development code, but we've been sort of advised by the state that that's not really best practice. We should probably have a little bit larger commission. As you can imagine, getting a quorum can sometimes be difficult when you only have 3 members. So we're going to look to maybe increase that membership to 5. And so if we go through that process, it'll be a development code update, and that will eventually come to the city council. One of the projects that we're working on right now is actually to do, this is a series of projects, but is to really acknowledge much better the fact that Senator Mark Hatfield was born in Dallas and lived here for a number of years when he was a child.
Senator and governor.
Senator and governor, thank you very much. An amazing individual, one of those few great Oregon politicians that people, I think, of all ilks tend to admire, regardless of his party. So we want to bring more attention to the fact that Senator and Governor Hatfield was born here. So one of the projects we just kind of started was we working with the Dallas High School to do an essay contest that's ultimately going to be condensed down to a plaque that will be on or near or somewhere around Senator Hatfield's childhood home here in Dallas, which still exists. So we're going to begin a series of projects around that. And I think, there was more than just Senator Hatfield on this slide, sorry. So the Dallas Cinema this year got recognized individually recognized as a national designated historic site, which is really awesome. And as I mentioned, we're beginning the process of forming the National Historic District. This is what the boundaries of that proposed district is. And just to orient yourself, the big square in the middle is the courthouse square. So 2023 will mark those steps to actually create that district. So that's it for part 1. Don't miss part 2 coming next month when we'll talk about economic development, urban renewal, and building inspections.
Any more questions?
Thank you, Charlie.
Right.
Okay, council rules.
Right. Right, thank you, Mayor Woods. So according to the charter, every odd numbered year, the council is to consider your rules of procedure. That's stated in section 13 of the charter. So those rules are attached starting on page 4 of your agenda packet. Staff don't have any recommended changes this year, but if you do have changes that you want to make or anything that you feel needs to be added, subtracted, or modified, this is your time to dive into that discussion. So with that, I will turn the time back over to you, Mayor, and see what the council has to do.
Yeah, I went through these in some detail this morning, and I found a bunch of things that I think could be improved. Each one of those yellow tabs is one of them. It's not as daunting as it looks. A lot of these are just cosmetic typos, extra word in a sentence, just, things to clean up. But there are a few substantive things in there. Now, the way these rules are written, each one of us has to sign these before the end of January, because it says that right in there. But it says within 30 days of taking office, which means January 31st. So rather than try and get down in the weeds and take up a lot of time here, which I don't think would be a productive use of our time, what I'm going to suggest is that we go ahead and keep these as they are now, sign them like we're supposed to dot the i's and cross the t's. But then after that's done, send them to probably the admin committee to go through with a fine-tooth comb and just bring them up to speed. There's a few places, some of the substantive ones here are things where the rule says one thing and our actual practice is different. So we're not doing exactly what it says in here. So they've diverged.
Can you give us?
And I get the impression that it's been a while since we really went through them closely.
Can you give us an example of something?
Oh, sure. Well, there's one place, if I can find it quickly, where it contradicts itself within a single paragraph. One sentence says, do this do A and then do B, and then about 3 sentences later in the same paragraph, it says, do B first and then do A, so stuff like that.
Because we just looked at this last year.
Well, like I say, I think mostly what happens is we look at this and pretty much rubber stamp it. I get the feeling from this accumulated stuff that it's just been a while since we sat down and went through it
Last year.
section by section.
Yeah.
You know, well, some things
Twice a year
are in there
before.
that really ought to be cleaned up.
Yeah, so I think that's a good proposal to take those. We can certainly
Keep them as they are for now.
I can gather the feedback from you, Councilor Shane, and present those to the admin committee later this month. Does that work for you, Councilor Briggs? Okay, so we can discuss it later this month and then bring those items back at the February workshop for further discussion.
Okay.
Are there other topics besides the list from Councilor Shane?
Maybe I could suggest it electronically?
Yep.
Is that it? Yeah, okay.
Okay, I'll just send you an email.
The only other comment I have is it possible for all of us to get, or at least me to get a copy of the Roberts Rules of Order?
Yes, in fact, those have been ordered
They have.
for all members of the council and every chair of all of our advisory committees.
I just.
So
reading through saw that.
that was one of Sam Kaufman's last tasks that I gave him. And so those are on order and they should be arriving, I would guess, sometime this week.
I hope it's not a lot of reading.
I don't think the books are overwhelming.
It really depends, because you can order the rules themselves, which is a book about that thick.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of, but then there's a lot of digests and simplifications, like, Robert's Rules for Dummies. I don't know if that actually exists, but there's a lot of more condensed stuff like that really just has the essential stuff that you need to know day to day, rather than, the big thick tomes. So the answer to your question is it can be thick or it can be thin, depends on what they ordered.
Yeah, and I'm not entirely sure the book that he ordered, but I think it was like $6 a book. So it's probably not the thick book.
Yeah, and what we actually need for what we do here is probably 10% of what's in that big.
And we have the fail-safe language that no action in violation or deemed invalid because it wasn't in conformance with Robert's rules. So
And we also have a
they're
city,
more like guidelines.
and we also have a city attorney who spent 4 years presiding over the state legislature, so.
Actually, the legislature uses Mason's manual and not Robert's
Oh,
rules.
do they really?
Yeah, it's a little bit,
Don't tell me your middle name's Robert.
no.
I had a mayor whose name is Robert, and he said it's Robert's Rules, and I'm Robert, so it worked. Yeah, that's on order to be given. So if there are additional suggestions from counselors that you're not thinking of tonight that you want to get me before the admin committee, if you can give me those by the end of this week, that'd be helpful.
First thing.
I am thrilled with the opportunity to sit as chair. And
Oh, here it comes.
I would like us to, and I just re-reviewed my notes and I don't see it here in today's discussion. So I don't know if this belongs today, or you might tell me it doesn't belong in this part of the discussion. I know that we need to make sure that the mayor and the president we need to have chairs. And I can envision a place where everybody would say thanks, but no thanks. And so I know that the mayor and the president need the ability to say, I am assigning this to you. I would like to talk about a different process. So it's less of I have assigned this chore to you and you will do the dishes tonight. And more of hey, let's have a conversation. This is why I think you would be a good person for chair. This is what that looks like. Did you just volunteer for a giant extra bunch of work at work and maybe don't have time? Like, what's happening? And I just would like the opportunity to chat about a way to do that. And I'm thrilled with the opportunity to serve. I just want to make sure that that's really clear. This is not me saying, I really don't want to do this.
So,
maybe a better way to.
Yeah, so section 11 discusses what you're talking about, Councilor Collins, and it just says that the mayor shall, at the first meeting of January of each year, or as soon thereafter is convenient, appoint council standing committees. Each council standing committee shall comply with council rules of procedure. Council rules of procedure, subsection A, the mayor shall appoint a chair of the council standing committees to serve as presiding officer. I think what you're getting after is more of, hey, is there a process that we can flesh out a little bit more? So I think that's appropriate, and we can discuss it at the admin committee.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very glad that you chose me, and I really appreciate it. And I don't want this to come across like now I'm stuck with this. I just do want to make sure that in the future, it's a different way to get it.
So,
If I can, I think the language here is really designed to make sure that the mayor does it. Because it is the mayor's responsibility. And nothing to say that it couldn't be done, we had language in consultation with, or something the members proposed, but I think the language there is really more about making sure that the mayor actually does this. That's the shall appoint
Yes.
kind of language. So it's not just strung out or overlooked by the mayor.
Yeah, and I guess maybe if I'm not speaking for you, you can correct me here, but I think it's, and Councilor Collins wasn't the only one that was kind of surprised that they were a chair of a committee this year, right? Because we had 3 new committee chairs, right? And so I put it on Mayor Woods to say, hey, you have to assign the council committees and you have to appoint chairs. And so, which was maybe a surprise for him, but he did that. And so there just wasn't, I would say there was probably no communication between the mayor and the councilors on, how, hey, these assignments are coming, stuff like that. And so I think that's where Councilor Collins is saying, hey, maybe if there's a little bit more process before it just gets dropped, hey, you're a committee chair, would be beneficial for the councilors themselves to just know that that's coming.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like Lane said, the language is in there just to make sure it doesn't slip through the cracks and not get done.
Mm-hmm.
But it's up to the mayor how he wants to do it. And I think what this all boils down to is let's just talk to each other more.
Mm-hmm.
I was just going to suggest adding the mayor shall collaboratively appoint, or some kind of a reciprocal word in our charter to encourage the mayor to communicate to the.
That's a perfect topic when these rules go to the
Yeah,
admin
yeah.
committee.
Once it goes to the admin committee, we'll bring in some suggested language for that, but we understand the point.
I know years past, there was a lot of people on the council for many years, and they just took turns. So, and you usually moved from one committee to the next committee, and then the next year you moved to another committee, or not, and you each, I don't know how many times I was chair of every committee, but that's the way it used to be. So when you're down so many members on the council, you go with what I got. So,
And that was a good thing because it meant everybody got trained in every area.
so
and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe if you're not able to make a meeting, the first order of business when you're not able to make a meeting is to appoint a person in charge of that meeting and voted on by that quorum. And then, so if you can't make a meeting because you're busy.
Yeah, I spent some time Googling Robert's Rules of Order.
Yeah.
Because I was in your shoes, like, okay.
But that's one good thing about committee meetings, and it's like Kim led her first meeting today, and we help you. And that's a place to learn Robert's Rules of Order that's one of the best places to learn.
Yeah, I'm happy that it's going to move on to the admin committee. And we want to make sure that we don't perpetuate this patriarchal, I have told you what your job is, concept, that we really do move toward, and I love the word collaboration, I don't know what word you guys are going to recommend, where this is a discussion and this is a way, I'm not worried that if I do something wrong, one of you will correct me and say, oh, gotta do this first or whatever. Those pieces, okay, that's not true. I was a little worried because I spent some time Googling how to do it right. So I was worried, but that isn't it. I just really want to make sure that we're creating we have the opportunity right now to create something different and move forward in a way. And I do like that idea of like, it's your turn to fill this role. Yeah.
And you got to remember one other thing Lane pointed out, the most critical part, even if we mess up, it doesn't matter. So
Before we move off, I've got one other question for Lane. There's language in here that we might want to add to our discussion that says,
You talk about section 12?
bear with me here.
This is a different section.
Yeah, it's the amount of counselors, says the
Is the quorum section?
yeah, where is that? I lost it.
quorum section.
It says something, here it is. It says 9.3, except as otherwise provided in the city charter, the concurrence of a majority of the whole number of the council is necessary to decide a question. What is the whole number?
Well, yeah, that language is actually out of the charter. That would be all, the whole number would be the total number of councilors.
And that would be 7 right now.
No, what this means is that when they say whole number, they mean the number of council positions that exist.
Positions.
Whether someone happens to be occupying that seat at the moment or not.
Yeah.
So what this boils down to is, in a council meeting, we can't pass anything with less than 5 votes. 5 votes
I
are needed to
understand that.
pass anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what that means.
Yeah, the whole, the whole number is the number of, I guess you're right, there's a vacancy, then the whole number is still 9. Because that's the number in the charter.
Okay.
Yeah, when you count the number of counselors, you include vacant positions.
Yeah.
For purposes of this, yeah.
Other committees may be different. I just had that issue come up last week at another committee that I chair for CIS. And we only had 7 of the 10 there, and 4 was a quorum before we passed the measure.
Yeah, our charter is very specific as to speaking of the whole number of the council and not just the number of currently sitting.
The whole number of appointed seats.
Of seats.
Yeah, different entities do it different ways,
Yeah.
but that's our rule.
Not the whole number
That's
of
our rule.
current councilors, a whole
Not the
number
whole,
of
not the whole
appointed
number of,
seats.
not the whole number of sitting counselors. It's
So
the
if you
number
have-
of.
If you're down to 5 councilors, everything needs to be done by unanimous vote.
Okay.
And if that's language that wants to be changed to be done in a different way, that needs to be a charter amendment.
Yeah, that's right. And it's always been that.
Yeah, when we revised the charter about 10 years ago, we just kept that language exactly the way it was. Didn't change a word.
Okay, moving on, Southwest Fire Polk Board letter.
All right. So back in November, you all received an email, at least those that were sitting on the council at the time. And so that letter is included as attachment A to this report for those councilors that were not on the council back in November. And so this came shortly after we as you as a council decided to kind of revise how you were allocating the ARPA funding and allocating $1 million, up to $1 million towards a training facility in Dallas. That came after a consultation with the fire department, the volunteers, to really recognize that, hey, training is important to us. We used to have the training grounds that we leased some space that went away several years ago, and right now we're using a vacant lot next door to the fire department, which is insufficient. And so we were looking at constructing a training facility up off of James Howe Road. So Southwest Polk, who's also in the process of building out their own training grounds at the Salt Creek Station, offered a letter to us and saying, hey, we think that a lot of the things you talked about building is stuff we're also considering building or have built or in the process of building. And we think that if you were to give us, cash, that we could build that out for you and then have a combined training grounds at their facility. That presents some concerns and some issues. Some of those I've addressed in questions to their fire chief. I just gave those questions to him last week on Monday, so it hasn't been a lot of time. I haven't heard back yet, so I haven't not yet received a response, but those questions are out there. And so I do think, and our fire chief is here with us tonight, he can also lend his opinion to this, but I do feel that it is important for us to look at partnerships. That in concept, this is, I think, an idea worth exploring. We just want to make sure that we're getting that right value for our department and that it works out the best. And so I think not only looking at a partnership with Southwest Polk, but also looking at a partnership with our other partner agency that's just down the road, who already has a training facility with different amenities than what Southwest Polk is providing, and that's Polk One. They have a station with a training facility, multi-story tower, which was not something we were going to build. So that I think there's different amenities that each of them provide. So there's just benefits, and I think it's important for us to look at both Polk One and Southwest Polk and determine, hey, what's going to work best for us? What investment makes the most sense for us? So that way we're getting, the best services and the best amenities
At the best cost.
at the best cost, right? And so those are things that we really need to look at and consider. So we have reached out to Polk One. We've talked a little bit about this with them and said, hey, what do you think about this? So there's conversations that are ongoing. There's certainly questions like the questions that we've presented to Southwest Polk that we need to present to Polk One. And my recommendation would be, if there's questions, you see the questions that I have asked, if there are additional questions or considerations that you think we should be asking, certainly bring those up tonight. Chief Dickerson and myself will reach out to both Southwest Polk and Polk One, figure out what those answers are, and then bring that information back to the council to decide which way you want to go, right? Shared facility, our own facility, our facility, plus, partnership with someone else. There's different ways to slice that pie up, but I think it's worth exploring all the options right now. And so that's kind of really the recommendation that we're looking at tonight. Happy to answer questions.
So I'm not sure if this is.
Yeah, that's fine.
Goes
We're both here to answer it.
Good. So, and this isn't necessarily about the partnerships you just brought up, but about the idea of having a training facility that's not close. And so my assumption is that in the what's the right decision discussion, the response time for being far away, and I know far away can mean a lot of different things depending on where you live in the city, but that's also being taken into consideration.
That's actually talked about in the letter from Southwest Polk, that specific issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they address it in certain ways, and we have concerns with that, and we've asked some questions in relation to that, and we would ask the same questions in relation to Polk One. I don't know, Chief Dickerson, if you have more you want to say on that.
It's the time that it would take someone to respond, as well as the amount of people that would be responding. If we were, for instance, if we were at Southwest Polk doing some training with our medic unit and our fire engine, their reserve forces is two people, and that may not be an ALS. So ALS it's important to have. It's 10% of our calls, but that 10% makes a huge difference to have the ALS. That's where Polk number 1 is exactly the same staffing, a little bit more robust than we are right now, but they have the same staffing and the same capability. So if we were to swap engines and do some kind of swap there, we have the same capability. That's where with Southwest Polk, we don't have that same amount of coverage. And that's important to me that this is Dallas receiving the coverage from me that they expect.
Yeah, back to this board collaboration again. I'm totally in favor of what you're doing and reaching out and working with these people to see if we can, if we can get some economy of scale and some cooperation that'll help us both. So from where I sit, yeah, keep doing what you're doing, keep pursuing this.
Yeah, and I think, I'm really happy that Southwest Polk wrote us this letter, because it did kind of, get both Jim and I thinking in different ways, right, than the path we were kind of headed down. But, there may be opportunities with, an agency like Polk One where we can build our training grounds, because I still think building something here in Dallas is going to be important. But if we can, build the things maybe that Polk One doesn't have, here, there's benefit for them, right? And there's benefit for us then to say, hey, why don't you come use what we have when on our training grounds that you don't have, and then we can use what you have that we don't have. And so there's a better partnership there, and it's better not only for, Dallas and for Polk One, it serves a greater region, and we may be able to, either reduce our costs or build things that that we weren't planning on building, because maybe that other agency has the things that we were planning on building that we don't have to anymore, right? So there's lots of benefits. Again, whether it's with Polk One or Southwest Polk, there's lots of questions we have to ask and be answered. But yeah, those are things we certainly need to look at. Again, questions that we've asked Southwest Polk. As we start to pursue with Polk One at the same time, we'll ask those questions of them. Once we gather all that information back, we'll bring that back to the council and say, where do you want to go with this? And we'll have a recommendation for you.
Thank you.
So again, are there any questions or considerations that we haven't thought about in our questioning so far?
I've got a couple
that you
Can I
feel
just
we need
send
to
you an
add.
email?
Yeah, you can send me an email.
I'll just
That'd be
send
fine.
an email tomorrow morning.
Okay,
Any more questions? Anything else?
that's it for that topic.
Okay. It's now 6:30. I'll see you in 30 minutes.
All right, yes,
Help
please
yourself.
help yourself. There's plenty of food in the back, sandwiches.
That was just the very nice. Everybody sees it.
Oh,
Everybody sees
okay,
it.
yeah.
Call this meeting of the Dallas City Council in order for the January 17th meeting, 2023. Secretary, call the roll, please.
Council President Schilling,
Here.
Councilor Briggs,
Here.
Councilor Collins,
Present.
Councilor Fitzgerald,
Here.
Councilor Jantz,
Here.
Councilor Shane,
Here.
Councilor Verdon is excused. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Please rise with the pledge of allegiance with me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, there's no introductions, recognitions, or proclamations, except I do have a proclamation to read. So please bear with me. City of Dallas, Oregon, proclamation, Fire Service Appreciation Day, January 27, 2023. Whereas all Dallas residents greatly benefit from the selfless service of our skilled and dedicated firefighters, each of us having an abiding sense of security, knowing that they are there for us to combat fires and the destruction that they can bring into our lives. And whereas firefighters face immeasurable risk every time they run to answer the alarm and speed to a fire, medical emergency, or a vehicle accident, where the risk, sometimes dire, can never be adequately known. And whereas the proud men and women, overwhelmingly volunteers who become Dallas firefighters, perform an immensely valuable public service in saving lives, protecting property, and promoting community values, such as the hours and hours of their time devoted helping others. Whereas this occasion provides for elected leaders with the opportunity to celebrate the day-to-day heroism of all firefighters serving Dallas, as all Dallas residents join us to humbly express our enduring gratitude to the remarkable people who wear the firefighter's uniform in our community. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the City of Dallas hereby proclaim January 27, 2023 to be Fire Service Appreciation Day in Dallas. Thank you. I remember Art Johnson, who used to be a firefighter, told me once, he says the only time you take a shortcut is on the way to a fire. So, public comment. Anybody would like to give us some public comment, please do though. I have only one, Ann Hurd, basically.
Unfortunately, I've had 3 experiences with our wonderful ambulance crew, and it was fabulous. All 3 turned out just great, and they hauled me to Salem, and it worked out great, and I was so thankful. Of course, one of the drivers I'd had in 3rd grade, so that was even more wonderful. I was awake for that one. But anyway, I'm here to talk about the Dallas Aquatic Center. I'm president of the Dallas Aquatic Center, 623 South Truscator Street here in Dallas. And everything's going great, except for the lifeguards. We're going to give another $10,000 after our meeting on Friday, because we're up to another $20,000 in our checking account, and we give everything over $10,000 to our trust fund. But gosh darn it, those lifeguards don't show up for work. Gretchen worked a 15-hour day last week just to keep the pool open. It was going to be open on Monday for just adults in the morning and in the evening, no rec swim, but no lifeguards showed up. So she just closed the pool. How long can we keep doing this before people stop going to the pool? I didn't know ahead of time Monday, and I was over there in the suit and everything. Dark, it's closed. I'm so disappointed. But she can't really fire them for not showing up, although she has every right to, because then that's even fewer that she'll have to work with. Do you think it would help? I asked her to give them more money, like so they'd make more money than Taco Bell. It seems to me it would, money really talks to kids. And she said, well, they're paid time and a half all day and nobody showed up. So I don't know what something has to happen. And it's a lifeguard shortage everywhere, not just here. But maybe we need to target a different age group or something. I don't know, but something has to happen in a positive way to get these lifeguard positions filled. I've seen a lifeguard, personally rescue that 2-year-old at one of the therapy pool, and he looked in that before he even got wet. It was amazing. The ones that are there, the job that they do. I think giving them more money would probably help, but I just don't know. She's got another lifeguard class coming up. And now, if they sign on to work at the Aquatic Center, they don't have to pay that $50 fee for training. And that's a big help. And there are some incentives that they built in if you're there for a certain number of months and then a certain number, and then their bonuses. But I just don't think it's enough. And somebody needs to start talking seriously about how we can solve this problem. And you think there would be moms maybe who swim at the pool, who would like to be a lifeguard maybe while their kids are at school, earn a little extra money. There are probably seniors who would do that too. The hard part is no 15-year-olds can work after 7 p.m. so that the evening one is the one they have trouble with. But it's something that needs to be looked at and handled, because when we get checks for $1,000 and $2,000 and we put it into our account, we're working on getting that lift for the therapy pool, which is taking forever because the company she's working with are being so unreasonable. It's a problem. And I'm just saying we need to get it fixed. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Anybody else? Next item is the consent agenda, which includes the January 3rd City Council meeting minutes, acknowledgement of the January 10th Parks and Rec District Formation Committee minutes, November and December 2022 financial reports, standing committee assignments, and advisory board appointments. Do you want to take anything off? If not, I need a motion to approve.
So move for approval.
Second.
Moved and second. Any other questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Passes unanimously. Moving down to reports and comments from the mayor and council members. Anybody have anything to say, or?
Just a question for the city manager. Do we have any, regarding the problem that Ann just described to us, do we have any good ideas for dealing with it?
Yeah, so we've done a couple of things that we've already implemented, and I'll rely on maybe Emily to make sure I get all this accurate. So the first thing we did is we made it so that our lifeguards who can work for the city, if they went through our certification class, they're not required to pay that back. So we pay for them to go through the class. Then if they work for us and stay with us for a certain amount of time, I believe it's 6 months. I think it's 6 months, maybe a year. But if they fulfill that commitment, then they don't have to pay that back to us. Normally that class costs, between $150 and $250. So that's a good thing that we've done. We also have created an incentive pay program. So if you come work for us every 6 months, I believe it's 6 months, it'd be 3 months. I can't remember if it's 3 or 6 months, but let's say 6 months. Every 6 months you get a $50 bonus, right, that rolls in. And I think there's 4 opportunities for that to come in for a total of, again, $200 of additional pay for just staying with us, over time. So those are the 2 things that we've done. One thing that we've talked about and are looking at coming into this next fiscal year, probably even before then, is adjustments to the salary, the starting pay for lifeguards coming in. To me, I talk about this everywhere. I even talked this morning at Rotary when someone said, "Hey, I'm looking for a job. Anyone know of jobs that are open?" And I said, "Aquatic Center lifeguards." And so I'm constantly talking about this with people that I come in contact with. But it is making sure that we're getting the word out. I have a note here to make sure we're getting that ad for lifeguards out through our communication specialist and the work that she's doing. But I think the more we can talk about this, the better chances are of actually getting those positions filled. It is like Ms. Hurd mentioned, I think, the people that don't recognize that they can be a lifeguard and that it's not, a 20-hour-a-week gig, it's come as you can, but do come when we need you there, that would be a good thing. It's really a volume, right? The more people we have, the less chances are that we won't have people to fill in when we need them. So those are the things we're looking at. But like Ann said, this is not a Dallas unique problem. It's across the nation. In fact, we were doing better than pretty much everywhere until it just kind of devolved to where we are today. But we're active in trying to combat that problem, and I think there's things that we just need to continue to do. But short of having the people want to become lifeguards, I don't know the answer.
Well, money is the first motivator you think of course, and it matters hugely. But other possible motivators exist, like credit and acknowledgement. Do we put their pictures on the wall? Do we do anything to raise their profile and get them acknowledged so that they get the prestige from that? Because that's another motivator.
Yeah, and there are other things that I've talked about as I've talked with youth, that I've encouraged to become lifeguards. The first response I generally get from everyone is, I'm going to be a Dutch Brothers barista. And I ask them why, and they're like, it's just cool. It's the cool thing to do. So somehow the aquatic center has to be the cool thing to do for high schoolers, and then this problem will go away. We're not there yet, but I'm trying to figure out why that is. Why is it attractive to want to go to Dutch Brothers? And there's social components to that that I think if we can somehow crack that nut of the social component at the aquatic center through the lifeguarding, I think that would be another area where we can see some benefit from our work.
Can you talk to the school district about things they can do to maybe imbue the community service attitude in the kids?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've talked with the superintendent about that, not only on this issue, but other issues as well, just in general volunteering and community engagement. So
thanks.
Yeah, this is a topic that is getting serious conversations. We're talking about it a lot, and we're trying to come up with those right solutions. So far, the things we've done haven't stuck, so we need to continue to look at that.
Kirsten.
I like your the thinking about how do we change the social viewpoint of this. Where are we with the Youth Advisory Council? That's not the right name of it.
Yeah, that's a great question. That is the right Youth Advisory Council. So we put out advertisement for that, and we only received one application. But I did get several inquiries about it. There was a matter of timing that I think made it not be successful right now, and because we're right heavy in the middle of a lot of sports seasons, and that was the biggest concern is does my child have to come to all the meetings because there's sports conflicts that they're engaged in right now. I mean, once we get to March, then a lot of those kind of fall away, and so I said they don't have to come to all the meetings, but make an effort to try to come to a few. So I think there was just enough conflicts that it wasn't the right timing. So we're going to pull back on pushing that right now, and we will do a big push before the end of the school year to get people to sign up for the Youth Advisory Council starting in the fall. I think we'll be more successful with that. So as I use Cottage Grove as a good example, that's their recruitment pattern. They start their recruitment in April and have people appointed by the end of May. So that way, by the time the school year ends, they know they're on this Youth Advisory Council. I think they have a kickoff before they go into summer break. So they all get together, they know they're on this, they kind of, can think about things over the summer. And then when they get back in the fall, they're rolling with it. So we're gonna do that. We'll start advertising again in April, hopefully have people appointed by the end of May, have a kickoff celebration, get back together in the fall. So we're working on it.
Have you thought of putting Dutch Brothers in the pool?
Yeah, there's a filter issue there. I don't think they make coffee filters big enough.
I mean, in the water, maybe just have a kiosk or something.
You're right.
Anything else from the mayor and council members?
I've got something, Ken. After finding out from Brian the price of the facilitation company that we were looking to use, I reached out to the League of Oregon Cities, and I just received an email back today. They suspended their facilitation program right before COVID. But this Friday, they're starting it back up, and she said it's really, really popular, and it's about $4,000 for them to facilitate a meeting like we've been discussing, and I kind of wanted to open that up for discussion. I guess now would be the time to do that, to see if there was.
Who was the person that responded?
It was Lisa Trevino, and their general counsel, Jamie Pierce, is the one that conducts the facilitation. And I guess it's pretty popular. Maybe Lane knows her.
Yeah, no, but
He's been there for 6 years. There is an 8-week lead time that we have to give them if we so choose to do that. So it's pushing it out there a little ways. But I just want to throw that out there for some discussion to see if it was something we would want to do.
You said 4,000 versus what were we looking at before?
10 or 12, wasn't it?
Yeah, we got a couple of just preliminary quotes back, and it was, no less than $10,000, but, maybe closer to 14, 15,000 on the top end for a 1-day session, which to me I thought was too much.
And that 8 weeks, sure. That 8 weeks lead time is for, are they gathering information?
Yeah, they do a lot of preliminary work with all of us. They ask questions and get information and gather that, but I believe it's actually 8 weeks before you pull the trigger on their services. So it says minimum 8-week notice required depending on the trainer's availability. So I think they don't start that process until the 8 weeks.
And to be honest, I'm not too concerned about that, right? As it relates to our strategic plan, which the council goals and that visioning and stuff gets wrapped into that document. You don't adopt that until June 30th, right? Because it starts July 1. So an 8-week lead time does a couple things. One, it enables you enough time to get the 2 vacant positions on your council filled and start getting those counselors up to speed on some things. And it also gives us still enough time to be able to incorporate anything that comes out of that council goal setting session into the strategic plan. So the 8 weeks isn't concerning from the staff's perspective.
And if we pulled the trigger right now, like tomorrow morning, next business day, we'd be talking about sometime in March, which is not too terrible at all.
And just to note, she said this program's coming back this Friday, so it'd have to be Friday when we.
Yeah, well, okay, so it's still March.
Right.
But it would be nice to do this after we have the other 2 positions filled. Hopefully it's by then.
Mhm.
Yes, Kirsten.
I would just like to have a conversation, like, what are the goals of having a facilitator? What's the goal and purpose of that?
Well, I've experienced it both ways, and it's easier, I think, with an outsider, because they
Okay.
keep us on track.
Okay,
We don't, sometimes if we have an in-house person do it, we get sideways quite a bit. Just start talking about things we don't need to be talking about. So, and it's just a different style. Somebody from the outside may do it a different way, and it makes sense. If you do it in-house, it's just like having this meeting right now.
okay.
My thought also, Kirsten, was it gives, especially the newer counselors, an opportunity to express their vision, their goals, their ideas, where they're collected and then presented in a more communicative way, rather than some of us being a little shy or kind of embarrassed to bring up a dumb idea we might think that might be a great idea. So it's more of the council. This is the council goals and procedures, not the city staff. And it seems like we rely on them a lot to give us, good ideas and good feedback. But I would like to maybe encourage the council to step forward and be a little more visionary, and that would help the process, I thought.
Okay.
Yeah, 2 real quick things. Added on to what you said, doing it that way gives the new people an opportunity to express what they're thinking in a less pressured environment, not in a formal meeting like this, but in a much lower key environment where there's freer to talk and back and forth. And the other thing about an outside facilitator is these are people who do it for a living, and they have the skill set because they do it every day to lead these kinds of visioning sessions, and that's there's real value in that.
So what do you want? You want to have the city manager pursue this then, and
I didn't hear you. What?
have the city manager pursue?
We have to move.
Direction by consensus?
Okay.
I'm in favor of that, sure.
and have them work with the League of Oregon Cities, and who we've worked with many times before, so it's not an outsider.
I'd like to see that.
Okay, you understand?
I understand the direction. So you said is it Jamie Hafner that does the facilitation?
I can send you the, well, I did send you the email.
You sent me an email. I'll
It's
look at it.
Lisa Trevino is who I'm talking to.
Right, that's who you're talking to.
And Jamie Pierce,
Bill Pierce.
that's a recent
She's a recent hire.
name change. It
Yeah.
was, she just
Oh,
married.
she just got married?
so-
Oh,
and I
okay,
didn't
so
write
yeah,
down
it could
her
be the other,
maiden
the same
name.
Jamie I'm thinking of.
Okay, anything else from the city council? Okay, we'll move on to reports from city manager and staff.
Thank you, Mayor. So our first one is we have a few presentations tonight. One by the Dallas area seniors and then another one by the Downtown Association. So we'll start with Betty and Michael from the Dallas Area Senior Center. And as Emily logs in, she will pull up their presentation. If you can do that, Emily, it's just right there. And so I'll invite Betty and Michael, or one or both of you, to come up and go and give the presentation. Just for the benefit of those in the audience, we are having some sort of static or some sort of feedback issue from time to time. So it seems to be intermittent tonight. It just happened tonight for the first time. So if you hear that, Betty, as you're presenting, it's okay. Just keep talking.
So my name's Betty Sledge. I actually work for Polk County. I'm on my 35th year as a behavioral health specialist dealing with older population. I'm responsible for every citizen in the county over 60 years old, whether they're mentally ill or not. Every citizen, and funded through the state through the Older Adult Behavioral Health Initiative.
So mentally ill, would that include city councilors?
And me.
Over 60.
But at this time, I'm here to present for, I was elected president of the Dallas Senior Association. I took over in August from Michael, who had some health issues and didn't want that kind of responsibility. And we also have Katie here. She is our board of director. So we're kind of a little trio that we make trouble mostly. I'm not sure how to use this, Tyler. With that one, okay. So here's our new building, as hopefully some of you have at least seen. We're gonna soon outgrow it. It's very crowded, 2 or 3 days a week. Thursdays is our least busy day, so there's still room for growth. But we came up with this vision statement. We're looking to enrich the lives of older adults and provide services and activities that not only sharpen their minds, but improve physical and emotional health and keep them active and involved in the life of the community. So we have a few things going on, well, more than a few. We started the community garden this year. We have the library upstairs that was a donation from a former member that passed away. We do mahjong. We have mahjong upstairs a day a week, I believe. We have karaoke in the evenings and also twice a month during the afternoons. They've stopped it over at the 50 Plus Center, and some of those members over there requested that we do it. So we have darts and, just a variety of things. We're always adding more. We're looking at educational opportunities. This year, we started in August and ended in December with an elder law series. We're very lucky to have Keith Tierney, who was worked as in Nevada under 4 different governors, and he was their state economist, and also he runs a nonprofit, Civil Rights for Seniors. And he gave us a whole series of all kinds of talks about elder law. We've had Medicare information in. I've done quite a few things on Alzheimer's, how to stave off Alzheimer's, healthy living, fall prevention, all kinds of things that can prevent people from using services, emergency room services and other things. We do a lot of social activities. We have potlucks and parties, and we have a chat and chill where folks are lonely. I'm really, as a county, mental health is looking at isolation and loneliness, which has just skyrocketed in all populations, but especially in the elderly population since the pandemic. And so we do a chat and chill. People can just come in and talk about anything they want to with a
few friendly folks. There's an out to lunch bunch. That's a group of folks that once a month they go to a local restaurant. We're trying to keep it local so that not only we build our own restaurants up, but it also is, you get more folks when they don't have to, it's an expense to drive now at $4 or whatever it is a gallon. So we've had more people since we are not going into Salem and some of those places. We do lots of games. Cards is huge. We have a lot of card players and a lot of people who love to play cards. Cribbage and puzzles and bunco and bingo, and we have bingo twice a month. It's also in the evening. We have about 50 people show up. It's really fun. We're looking at all the time at enriching people's lives in all kinds of things. So our membership has grown steadily since Michael took over last January. We now have 247 members. He set a goal for me tonight that he wants 500 members by the end of the year. So we'll see. It's not undoable, I don't think. There's people that come in every single day looking for connections. And so this is a real busy time for us now because folks are renewing, and for whatever reason, we're getting a lot of new membership. So you can see that that's just a trajectory, and we've added, I don't know, at least 20 people in the month of December. So it's still going up. We're looking, in the future, well, we already have low impact aerobics. That's twice a week. We have a walking club. We have an Alzheimer's support group that was, it's run by Sally Davies. I don't know if anybody remembers Dr. Davies, who was here and practiced here and in Salem Hospital for years. And he recently retired. He was my doctor, and I said, "You're 15 years younger than me, and I'm still working. This isn't right." But he still does the Saturday clinic over at the Lutheran Church. So he's kept his medical license. He just didn't like the new administration, and you get 15 minutes and you can only talk about one thing with your patient. And he said, "I'm not doing it." So, but Sally runs the Alzheimer's support group for people who either have a spouse or a parent or whomever that has some sort of cognitive problems, and the stress that causes. It's a big job. We have a listening ear. I do that 2 hours a week. It's more mental health focused, but not necessarily. People can come in and talk about anything they want. I've had a variety of things, people who get in trouble legally, people who are have lost a spouse and this is the first time they've been out of their house in 2 months, and those sorts of things. Again, loneliness, isolation, all of those things. We do have, of course, Meals on Wheels there at the center. NWSDS still is not having congregant meals where people come and eat the meal. It's all packaged and delivered. And I don't see, I'm on 3 of their boards, and I don't see in the near future that any of the 5 counties that NWSDS covers is going to do congregate meals in any time in the future. So that's a loss, because that was a time when people could come together, but unfortunately they just don't want to do it for a variety of reasons. So these is, I'm looking this spring and summer to do a whole nother series of health and wellness, aging well, all of those sorts of things. I probably have 50 already locked and loaded, because a third of my job is presenting to both the community and the workforce to train people, therapists or home care workers, or any number of people in various things that have to do with taking care of the elderly. Here's a breakdown of our month-to-month enrollment, and also by age. So our population in the green section, which is 70 to 74-year-olds, is growing. Our median age is on the higher side. It's the 75 to 79-year-olds. But you can see it down there. I hate to read slides, but underneath there is all the breakdown of the percentages. We're very heavily feminine, 3 to 1. But we are looking at, we have 2 men on our board, and they're looking at bringing in things that men might be more interested in. One of them is a flight simulator, and he's addicted to it, and he said he has these little groups at his home of men. And so I told him I could probably stay onto that up. So fortunately, my position at the county comes with a budget that is just mine, and I'm the only one who has access to it. So I've donated quite a bit to the center because it's used for the elderly. So that's a good thing. And this is, again, a breakdown by age and males and females. So the red is the female, heavily female. And again, our median age is 75 to 79.
That break between the first and second bars is fascinating.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, 60 to 64-year-olds. I mean, there's a whole thing called ageism. And, where the older you get, the less relevant you are in society. And some of the people who perpetrate ageism the most are seniors. I can't tell you how many people that I know that are older than I am, and I will be 70 in August. Can't hardly believe it. But anyhow, they say, I can't go to the senior center, I'm not old. I'm not old enough for a senior center because there's a mindset that it's a bunch of old people sitting around knitting, and that's not who we want to be in, because it's not who we are. So we are looking at, and that'll be things like that Katie will be charged with as the chair of the board, to look at how do we engage people 60 to 64, some of those younger people, and have more robust, wine tasting tours and I don't know, whatever else. I mean, I just work. I don't know what people do. But yeah, it's very small. And then because of our community block grant, you have to be 60 years old to be a member. Because I have encountered folks in their late 50s who are retired, mid to late 50s, and they want to come down and join, but they're too young. They have to wait till they're 60. And they say, well, this one couple I'm thinking of, they said, we're both retired. She's 56, I think he's 58. He said, well, you have grandchildren, why can't we go down there? And I said, well, you can come down, but not steadily, because it has to be intermittent, and you cannot be a member. It's just part of the community block grant that we have, and part of the rules. So it's a magic number, that 60, and how do you engage them just at that time? Yeah, we'll have to figure that out. In our community life, we're doing the community garden. This year, for the first time, I did the Polk County Fair and Crazy Days. I had a booth. I did it both for mental health and the behavioral health side of things, and the senior centers. At the fair, I represented both Monmouth Senior Center and Dallas Senior Center, because I'm a member of the board of the Monmouth Senior Center. So I represented them both, and we actually got quite a few members during both of those things. We work with the city, of course. I also on the board of the Dallas Downtown Association, and Tyler's just been fantastic. And so we're looking at standing up a more robust website and enter into social media. We have a Facebook page, but I really need to find somebody really young to make it a little bit more robust and do some of the neat things that you can do with social media. It's just finding other people, because you only have so much bandwidth. I'm still struggling with, I can't do it all. I keep trying. So what do we have in the future? What are we looking at? General community knowledge that we exist and that we have things, and that if you're one of those sandwich populations where you're taking care of your elderly parents and then you still have kids that you're trying to take with and you're stuck in the middle, that the senior center is a viable option to help take the parents off your hands for a few hours a day or a week, and to teach seniors that it's a really neat place to be, where you can really make friends. Really supportive folks down there. Transportation, I'd like to work on transportation. There's so many seniors who've lost their ability to drive. You know, their vision's not good anymore, their reaction time, a variety of reasons. And so they want to come, but there's no way to get them there. And we do have a couple of taxi services in town, but on a regular basis, you know, it's probably not so affordable. And so I'd like to do a transportation program, preventative health checks, to have something like what they have over at the Lutheran Church, with that Saturday health clinic, to do things that, health checks that are important to seniors. Tools for addressing aging and problems and issues. Affordable elder law services. This is something that I'm working on with Keith Tierney, who's our member that is a retired attorney, in partnering. We're almost there. We're 7/8 of the way there, in partnering with Willamette Law School to have interns come and provide services at a greatly reduced price, and Keith would be the proctor. So they're very excited. It's just trying to get the last little details. And we'll start probably with estate planning kinds of things that seniors would most likely be interested in, and then expand from there. So that would be a great thing too, and it's almost ready. One-on-one home member contact list for folks who, you know, we'll have people who will pass away and nobody even knows about it. And I know in the mental health world, we've had people that aren't found for a couple of days, you know, because nobody's gone to their home, nobody's called. So we'd like to start some sort of a thing where you check in with somebody every single day on a regular basis, so that nobody is left alone. Becoming a force in elder politics and advocacy. I'd like to do teach a advocacy 101 course. I'm on the legislative and advocacy committee for NWSDS, and so you know, I've got all that stuff locked and loaded, ready to teach people, and it would help. And then the next thing is the virtual meeting capacity. It's something I'm working on like right now. In fact, Emily, I think I sent you an email, I don't know, sometime back, trying to get cameras and the big monitors in the senior center capable of being able to have virtual meetings and Zoom meetings and things like that, and trainings. That could actually, that people could Zoom in. It would be at the center, but they could Zoom in from their homes or wherever they happen to be. Or a lot of training. I have specialists in all kinds of fields all over the state, and they will come, and they won't come, but they'll do a training from their home on Zoom, and we could put it on the screen, and then I could be the moderator and explaining things and other things. But right now, there's not those wide angle cameras where if you're in Coos Bay, let's say, and you're teaching nutrition, they could see the whole audience. We don't have that capability. I've checked with IT at the county. They said it would run between $1,800 and $2,000 for the wide angle cameras. And then he said, you've already got the sound system in here. Somebody named Philip, I guess, that's what he told me, did the sound system when they built the building. He said, I don't know who he is, but all we did was install the electronics and whatever's in the locked closet back there. But he said it would cost about $1,800. And I have that in my budget. I've just got to write it all up and get it done, and get it approved. So that's coming real soon, because I'd like on this health and wellness series that I want to do in spring and summer, I want it to be virtual. You know, it could be what they're calling hybrid. You can come in person or you can Zoom in, so that we can reach more people and hopefully help folks along. So that's who the senior center is. And you know, I'd like to work on, all of us would like to work much closer with the city and make this the viable resource that it should be, because the largest growing population in the country are people 65 and older. in 2030, there will be more people over 65 in the United States than there will be under 18 years old for the first time in history. So the silver tsunami is here already. And so I'd like it to be as robust as it deserves to be and serve as many people.
Any questions for Betty? Yes.
Well, first of all, do any of them want to be a lifeguard? No. So on one of your slides, you had something, and I was listening and watching and not taking notes, but you had something about being a communications secretary?
Oh, that's one of the jobs. We have a communications secretary that would, it's kind of like a correspondence secretary.
Well, I think that's what it
belong
said.
to that. Yeah, that's the same job. So you write birthday cards to people, you write get well cards, you write, we're thinking of you and we haven't seen you for a while. Again, that connectivity so that you're not, because when depression hits, and it's a worldwide pandemic, it's the most common mental illness in the world is depression. And it is rampant in older adults. 60% of people in long-term care have clinical depression, 60%. That's horrid, and for many of our members, they're not in care, they're living in their homes, but who knows what's happening with them. So if you have somebody connecting, hopefully then they could come and, if they would come to me or learn about it, I could get them connected up with mental health services and get them the help that they need and deserve.
Councilor Shane.
As we heard again tonight, everybody in every field is struggling with staff. And very often, and again, we heard this tonight, the one result of that is just difficulty in simply keeping the doors open. Is that a problem for you? And, would you be, how many hours a week is the building actually available for people to come in and do things? And would it be more if you could get more people?
Yes, we currently spend much more money than we're taking in. Much more money than we're taking in. We are open from 10 o'clock to 3 o'clock, and then we're open from 5 to 9 for bingo nights, and I can't remember karaoke, Michael, but it's like 6 to 9 or something like that in the evenings. We do have a problem with the city billing system. We haven't been billed since October, so we have no idea how much we owe, and each month it's different because it's based on how much electricity and stuff we use. And our treasurer she calls the city and she goes, it's been 4 months now, I need to know how much we owe. And they say, well, we're just behind and that sort of thing. So we're trying to set up a budget. When Michael and I came on, we were not in compliance with a 501c3. And so it's been a terribly heavy lift to change it from their mindset of this being a social club to a business. That's been a big shift. And if you've worked with elders, change is not necessarily a good thing. And so we've done a ton of changes. And having a standing budget, an operating budget, they just haven't done it before. And it's like, good Lord. So we're working on it, but it's really hard when you don't know what your expenses are. And I wish we could go back with the city of saying, charge us whatever you're gonna charge, $600 a month or $700 or whatever it is, and take an average or something, and that would be it, and then we could budget it in, but that's a conversation for somebody other than me, because I'm not great. I'm great at saving money. I have a lot of money, but not organizing, and I pay somebody else to do it for me. So, but yes, we would like to be open more. We desperately need a staff person. I've got 3 grants out now, one for a staff person, one for handicapped access, because we still don't have handicap access to the 4 bathroom doors, and that's a disaster waiting to happen. We've had 2 or 3 people fall in there. I've had a person trapped in there because you get walkers and wheelchairs and canes, and those are fire doors, and they get in and they can't get out, and then they pull too hard and they fall, and somebody's yelling out. I'm going, this this is terrible, but you can only do what you can do. So I have a grant out for those. I haven't heard back from that. And then I have a transportation grant out. And then we're gonna be doing more grants, requests and, for funding. And then, Katie brought up that we have to do at least a couple of major fundraisers a year, that will bring in thousands of dollars, because to keep our doors open, I can only estimate, because they have not had a budget, $20,000 to $30,000 a year. And we probably bring in, I don't really know, but much less than that. So we're using our savings and those sorts of things. And that we may have 2 years. So we gotta change things up. But starting with a budget, that'll be the first step. And then getting more members and writing in grants, because nobody's had the capability of doing that before.
If you're a
Michael and I came
501c3,
on.
you've got to be doing that.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, but I'm telling you, that was a heavy lift, because they don't understand it at all, and it's been well, change for nobody is easy, right? We all like our own little comfort zone, so, but we're moving along. We've more than doubled the membership, and people seem very happy. I think we finally have the right people in the right places, and the real heavy initial stuff has been done. So we're in pretty good standing, and now it's just a matter of the finances. So,
Okay.
Pollyanna's my favorite movie, so it's gonna happen.
Okay, thank you, Betty.
All right, thank you.
Next, Dallas Downtown Association Annual Report.
Thank you, Mayor. So we have Tyler Ferrari here. He's our city's economic development specialist. Get that right? In the economic and community development department. So he also staffs part-time the Downtown Association for Dallas, and so he is here to give their presentation for their annual report, which a copy of the written annual report is in your packet.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager, for that again. Good evening, councilors and Mr. Mayor. My name is Tyler Ferrari. I'm an economic development specialist with the City of Dallas, and I will be not necessarily representing my role as the city tonight, but representing my role as Executive Director of the Downtown Dallas Association. So for those who are not familiar with the Dallas Downtown Association, this is our mission and our vision. And so the mission of the Dallas Downtown Association is to encourage and inspire the arts, restoration, economic vitality, and community spirit in the historic downtown district. And our vision is to see a vibrant and revitalized downtown as a welcoming destination for shoppers, travelers, and the local population. And so some of the things that I will be highlighting tonight are a lot of great things that happened for the DDA in the past year in 2022. And so some of those highlights include new members, the new staffing and funding agreement with the city, the completion of the historic Carnegie Building, which is now occupied and providing services to the community, as well as the DDA's recent award of a $3,000 grant from the Oregon Main Street Pitch Contest, the near completion of our board. Our board is nearly full, which is something that the DDA has struggled with for many years. And also our plans for new community events and our continued goals to grow our existing events. But first things first, one thing I do want to get into is really what our goal here as an organization is. And my goal as the executive director for this 3-year agreement is to really just make the DDA a financially self-sufficient organization. Now the DDA is not in a terrible place financially, but it is not in a place where it is able to be financially sustainable and to hire its own staff, which really limits its ability as a Main Street organization to do a lot of that important work. And so, as you can see here for our finances, we brought in about $32,000 this year in different types of revenue. About about half of that will be matching funds from the city as part of the agreement. But the DDA has been successful in doing fundraisers, as well as maintaining its current level of members, and as well as getting donations for some of its projects to be able to fund some of these programs. So one additional line item that is not in your written report is we got the final numbers for the donations for the holiday lights, which are the lights on the buildings here in downtown, and we were able to fundraise about $6,200 for that. So that was immensely successful this year, and that's something that we're really proud of. And these lights will be up until the time change. In addition to that, much of the expenses are just general administrative expenses. So paying for programs like QuickBooks, paying for our insurance, and those types of matters. So that amounts to about half of what we bring in each year, and that really goes to the point of the financial sustainability. And so the DDA is not in a place where it's able to hire a full-time person, and we're trying to get them to that point. And we're still working on what that number looks like for the DDA. It's different for every organization, but that's something that we're really aiming to be, is making this organization financially sustainable, as well as in a place where it can hire staff and maintain that status for years to come. And additionally, the DDA spent about $175,000, all of that pass-through funds from the Oregon State Historic Preservation Office through a grant through Oregon Main Street. And so those are counted in our expense sheets as well. And those were spent on the completion of the Carnegie Building. The building owner, Don Sheely, worked closely with the DDA to complete the restoration of this building, and a small ribbon cutting was held back in December. And so the DDA and Mr. Sheely were awarded $200,000 from Oregon Main Street for the revitalization and completion of the restoration of this project, as well as receiving $20,000 through the city's building improvement grant program to get the project done as well. And now, as the building currently is, it is now open and currently housing the 100-acre Academy, which is a private school here in Dallas. And so this is a picture from the ribbon cutting. As you can see, the facade, windows, and other aspects of the building have been greatly improved, and also brought up to its historical standard, as well as just general improvements as well. So as you can see here, here is a photo, I believe, from the early 1930s of what the building looked like before. And then here's a picture of what the building looks like today. And then for the school, the building owner did a lot of interior improvements while also keeping a lot of the historic character, which is part of really the State Historic Preservation's goal with these grants, is to make sure that the buildings are usable, but also keep that historic nature. And we're really excited to be able to have a great tenant in this building and being able to provide these services to the community. In addition to that, I did attend the Oregon Main Street Conference back in October in Klamath Falls, and that was a great experience to learn more about what other Oregon Main Streets are doing across the state to better their organizations and their cities. And part of that also involved getting involved in Oregon Main Street's first ever pitch contest. And what we pitched there was a summer movie series that we want to bring here to downtown Dallas. And we were the runner-up for that contest, and that runner-up award was $3,000. And so coming this year, Oregon Main Street will be awarding us that $3,000 grant, and we'll be using that to host a first ever summer movie series here in downtown Dallas. And we're really, really excited about that. In addition to that, membership has really suffered since the COVID-19 pandemic. Any nonprofit organization can tell you that membership was something that really suffered, as well as volunteerism. And so the DDA really reached its lowest members during the pandemic. A lot of businesses had closed, a lot of businesses weren't operating and didn't renew their memberships. But the DDA has been able to rebound those numbers to about where they were before COVID. And these are some of the new members that we have today, such as Red Clover Tap House, which will be opening up on Church Street coming up this year. Two Wolves Tap Room, which is another local new restaurant in the community. Alter Media, which is a new addition to the community in terms of the multimedia marketing space, as well as other local nonprofits and community services like the Dallas Senior Center and the Dallas area seniors. And we're really excited to have this wide array of different organizations and businesses on board to help support the mission of the DDA. Another big success this year was the addition of 7 new board members. Again, this takes the DDA's board members to about 11, to where it had been hovering around 6 or 7 in the past. It was very low compared to other Main Street organizations. And we're able to have finally been able to add 7 new board members from all different types of professional backgrounds, as well as folks who are retired or close to retiring, or provide services inside of downtown and outside of downtown, and really making sure that the DDA is reflective of the community as a whole. And that's something that I think will garner the best outcomes for the organization. And then finally, we really want to expand and grow our community events. So this past year, we had our Scarecrow event, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. It's very popular in the community. We doubled the participation in that event this year, with companies from as far as Kaiser and Monmouth participating as well. And we had over 500 community members respond to our call to vote on the best Scarecrow, and really excited with the outcome of that. And we're really looking forward to expanding that even next year. My goal is to have a Scarecrow on every light post in downtown. And so that's something that we're really looking forward to really hit this year. And then we've really worked on doing our holiday window decorating contest as well. That was a bit smaller this year. We had about 9 businesses participate. We had about 50 community members respond, but that's something that we're looking forward to growing this next year, and really just getting downtown Dallas into the holiday spirit. Another thing that we're bringing back from COVID is the downtown cleanups. We held one in October and it was immensely successful. We had about 25 community members come out and clean up downtown just before the Chamber's Trick and Treat event. And that was something that we were happy to partner with the Chamber in doing, and making sure that downtown looked spruced up before we had about 2,000 people down there for the event. And we plan on hosting one in the spring, and we would love to have you all participate as well. And also, we plan on continuing the work with the city and other community organizations on community events, like the recent Christmastown effort that helped put on the wonderful tree lighting ceremony here in downtown, as well as put the new string lights in between the light poles here in downtown. And so we're looking to partner with them to expand those types of community events, as well as enhance existing ones like Crazy Days. And so our growth plan: how do we become a strong organization? These are kind of the 5 points that I really am aiming to hit in these next 3 years with the DDA. And so we want to build a strong board. We got there, and it's really about maintaining that board and maintaining consistency and continuity on that board. Want to build strong committees. The Main Street approach nationally relies on 4 committees that focus on 4 main points. And so our goal for this next year is to build up those committees that do a lot of the work of the organization and put on a lot of these events. And so we're always actively recruiting and making sure that people are aware of ways that they can get involved in the community and put on a lot of community events that I know people in Dallas want to have here. And it really is reliant on getting involved and getting connected with local organizations like the Downtown Association. And we also want to create meaningful events. We just don't want to have events for the sake of having them. We want them to be intentional, and we want them to bring people to downtown. We want to highlight great aspects about the community, and we also want to highlight the wonderful businesses that we have here in downtown as well. And we also want to continue fostering strong networks and connections, and that means working closely with Main Street organizations across the state, working closely with organizations like the Chamber of Commerce, like Explore Dallas, like Dallas Area Seniors, to make sure that all of the community is included in everything going on here in downtown, and that no one is feeling like downtown isn't for them. Because downtown needs to be the focal point of the community, and that's one of our goals, is to make sure that we work with our local partners to make sure that everyone in the community feels that way. And then finally, creating that healthy financial base. We want to make sure that the organization is sustainable fiscally for years to come. We don't want the DDA to fall into a situation to where 5 years from now it has to again rely on city staffing and city funding to survive. Strong communities have strong nonprofit organizations that do a lot of important community work, and we're really focused on making sure that the DDA is one of those organizations. And that ends my presentation. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Tyler? Yes.
Well, so silly question first. Who won first place for the pitch contest?
For the pitch contest, I believe it was the Oregon Rural Counties Economic Development Association. And their pitch was essentially doing a mass open house campaign out in rural Eastern Oregon. Rural Eastern Oregon downtowns have a problem with vacancy rates. And so they use the top prize of $5,000, and their plan is to try to bring a lot of the entrepreneurs that grew up in their towns and try to get them to come back and invest in those towns and create businesses there. And so I was really happy to see them win. They had a great presentation. They're a great organization. And if we were to lose to anyone, I'm happy that we lost to them.
Okay. So my serious question is there have been some rumors, scuttlebutt about what's going on upstairs in the Carnegie building. Is the entire building being used for the nonprofit school?
So my understanding is that the entire building is being used for the school, yes, but the school is a for-profit private school. They are not a nonprofit. So one concern that we had heard from the community is that they wouldn't be paying, that the building would then be taken off the property tax rolls. But since it is a for-profit school, that's something that will continue to remain in the property tax rolls, which benefits things like the urban renewal district.
Okay, well, that might answer the question of what's happening upstairs. So thank you. All right, thanks.
Anything else? Okay, thanks, Tyler.
Thank you so much for your time.
All right, Mayor. So next up on the agenda is the Fleet Services Intergovernmental Agreement for the City of Monmouth. And I will invite our Public Works Director, Gary Marks, to come up and discuss this topic.
Good evening, Mayor Woods, members of the council. It's a pleasure to be here with you tonight. A little context before I launch into the heart of the agenda item for the benefit of new members who may or may not know that the city has a fleet division that staffs 2 full-time mechanics. And those mechanics do all of our fleet work for the city, all of our apparatus work, but also they service 9 other local governments through intergovernmental agreements. So it's with that backdrop that our fleet supervisor, Tom Dick, was recently approached by a member of the Monmouth Police Department asking if we would be willing to begin fleet services for the police department in Monmouth. So the ensuing discussion has resulted in the intergovernmental agreement that you have in your packet. Essentially, if this agreement is executed, the first term would last until June 30, and then the agreement would be automatically renewed every year unless either party gives notice, 30 days notice, we can be out. So essentially, we would be providing services to support the Monmouth Police Department. However, the agreement is written such that it is general and would address the entire city of Monmouth should they decide to expand use of our services. So we are amenable to taking on this 10th IGA agreement. We do want to grow our business and thereby increase the utility to our own fleet services. So if you have any questions, I would be happy to respond to those.
Any questions, Dave?
I think you implicitly answered this, but this is a new agreement and not a continuation of an existing.
Yes, we have 9 existing agreements. This would be number 10.
Anybody else? Yes, sorry.
It says we're going to be billing them at $100 an hour. Do we know what our loaded cost is for an employee that would be doing the work?
It's about that. We're on a process of escalating that each year. So come July 1, we'll be doing another look at our cost and then adjusting accordingly.
So if this agreement is automatically renewed, we're able to amend the hourly rate?
Yes, and that's in the agreement.
But we are breaking even with this?
Yes, I believe we are. Actually, I think we're probably coming out just a little ahead. But like I said, we'll be doing some work this spring to adjust that rate, and I would see it going up some.
I would just certainly hope that we wouldn't be losing.
No, I don't believe we are.
Yeah, and the $100, when we did our evaluation this last year, when we adjusted the rates in the master fee schedule, we evaluated that and made sure that our fee was appropriate. We actually increased it. I think before this last year, we were charging $75 for all of our IGAs, and we increased that to $100.
It had not been
adjusted
for some time. But it is our intent to annually look at that and make adjustments as needed.
My only concern is with an automatic renew of the contract, we should really remember to reevaluate our costs. We could find ourselves 2 years down the road billing the same and our cost is.
Yeah, it's part of our budget run-up
And
process.
it can be terminated, which sort of leads to conversations about rates.
Okay.
Kirsten, then David. Go ahead, Kirsten.
So given some sort of a emergency or any other situation where we have vehicles or apparatus that need to be serviced, and then Monmouth or any of the 10 come in, how does prioritization work?
Well, we always have the priority.
Okay.
And I think that's very rarely happened that there's been any kind of conflict.
Okay.
David.
Yeah, on the question of adjustment rates as time goes by, and I haven't read the fine print, is that, are those rate increases indexed in some way, or do they have to be negotiated each time you want to go do it?
It's basically negotiated every year. Negotiation basically, like the last year, was basically sending notice to each of our IGAs, hey, we're going from $75 to $100 an hour. And then they can decide if they want to continue the agreement. Nobody dropped out.
So it's an instance by instance thing, it's not linked to the CPI or anything like that?
No, not at this point, it's not.
Anything else, David?
Move to direct the city manager to execute the agreement.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Sorry you had to wait for the whole meeting. Okay, next is, there's no first reading of ordinances. Second reading of ordinance number 1883.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So this is an ordinance changing the zoning designation of a parcel of real property owned by Highland Greens LLC from residential low density to residential high density.
Any more questions? If not, I will declare ordinance number 1880 to have passed the second reading. We'll now place it for final passage, and the secretary will call the roll.
Council President Schilling?
I believe I'm recused.
Oh. We know.
Yeah, so-
Did you declare a conflict?
So he declared a conflict of interest
We
during
do
the
that
public
every
hearing.
meeting where it comes up.
Yes.
So go ahead, if you declare the conflict.
I'm declare conflict, potential conflict,
Because,
I work for the
yeah,
developer.
okay, good. Yeah, that has to be declared each meeting.
Yep.
But if it's a potential, you can still vote.
If it's potential, you can vote, yeah.
If it's actual.
And in fact, if it's potential, you must vote because the charter says you have to vote if you can vote.
Does he vote in the case where he recused himself from the public hearing, so we didn't participate in the hearing? Doesn't matter? Okay.
So so I guess I missed the one that came up. So if it passes, could or would result in financial benefit to you?
No.
Okay, then you're free to vote. It should.
Yes.
Council President Schilling, yes. Councilor Briggs?
Yes.
Councilor Collins?
Yes.
Councilor Fitzgerald?
Yes.
Councilor Jantz?
Yes.
Councilor Shane?
Yes.
I don't get to vote anymore? Okay. I declare ordinance number 1888 to pass by unanimous vote. Any other business? Please remember we're going to leave this meeting and start the urban renewal agency meeting. Our next council meeting is February 6th at 6 o'clock for a workshop and 7 o'clock for the business meeting. So I declare this meeting over. And open up the Urban Renewal Agency Board of Directors meeting. And Secretary, do you have the role for the next meeting?
Yes, I do.
So we're okay? Yeah. Second is to approve the minutes of the November 21st, 2022 Urban Renewal Agency Board of Directors meeting. I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, passes unanimously. The proposed revisions to the minor improvement grant program on page 3. Mr. Manager?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Woods. So I will invite Charlie Mitchell, our Economic and Community Development Director, to come up and present on this topic.
Good evening. The request you have before you is a recommendation from your Urban Renewal District Advisory Committee, who voted 5-1 at their last regularly scheduled meeting to move this item forward to you. So that's a little bit of the background. The more detail on this is that, as hopefully many of you know, the Urban Renewal Program has two essential grant programs that we've been providing to help invest in our buildings downtown. The larger of the two, the Building Improvement Grant Program, is dormant at the moment because we don't have the sufficient funds in our budget to fund that program. However, the Minor Improvement Grant Program remains active. And it's the belief of the URDAC, as well as staff, as well as members of the Downtown Association, that if we could enhance this program a little bit, it could be more successful. We have seen increased activity in it recently. The current program guidelines limit the individual grants to $500 per project. With today's costs, et cetera, that doesn't go very far. And so the commission felt that doubling that to $1,000 maximum grant per applicant might be more appropriate. We might see more impact in our downtown with this program. And in addition to that, the complementary recommendation was to increase the annual budget for the program from $4,000 to $10,000. So in theory, in any given year, if everybody maxes out their individual grants, we could see 10 projects per year. So that's the recommendation to you this evening. Just a note on the attachment, which is the guidelines for the program. On the second page, the second to last section where it says grant application evaluation, if you have a color printout, there's an item in red there that says note. If you have black and white, it's just gray. You can strike those three sentences. They should not be there, and we'll strike them regardless because they weren't part of the original guidelines. So just ignore those three sentences, please. We'll make those changes. So anyway, so our recommendation from staff and from the URDAC is to change the program criteria, increasing the individual grant award from $500 to $1,000, and to internally adjust the budget from $4,000 to $10,000.
Any discussion?
So just to add a little bit to Charlie's last comment there about that note was part of the guidelines for the Building Improvement Grant Program. And when you approved your minor improvement guidelines, the minor improvement grant guidelines, that note did not exist. And so just when these guidelines were updated, staff erroneously put that note on both the guidelines for the Building Improvement Grant and the Minor Improvement Grant. So that's why it shouldn't be there, and we just missed it when we put this packet together.
Right, and it's just guidance. As you can see, it's not really part of the criteria, but it can be construed that the agency actually approves these applications, which it does not. These are approved at the staff level, so it's confusing, certainly as it's worded right now.
So you've got money in the budget to make the increase from 4,000 to 10?
Yes.
Any discussion, any questions?
That was my question.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Yes.
Will that limit the amount of businesses that can apply?
Uh,
By raising how much each?
It actually increases it by 2, because right now at $4,000 at 500, you can have 9 or 8 people apply. At $1,000 at 10,000, you can have 10 people apply for the maximum award.
I'm sorry, yeah, I didn't understand your question. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
We ran into a couple of years ago where when you said people apply, this is what made me think this. Is this by tax lot? I don't know why I'm pointing at you. Is this by tax lot, by address, by company, by, how does this come about?
Yeah, so we're not changing the guidance on that. I believe it's by property.
Trying to remember how
Property
this one.
I think it's by tax lot, right? So by property, when I mean property, it's by tax lot. So you might have a tax lot that has like 4 addresses because they have multiple tenants, but it's not by tenant, it's by.
So under item 6, under grant requirements, only one minor improvement grant will be awarded to a property during any one fiscal year. The same property may become eligible for grant approval in the subsequent fiscal year if all work associated with the prior grant is complete and has received final inspection approval from the city.
And for property, the tax lot?
That's,
Well,
Yeah.
probably, but tax lot isn't necessarily the same as a legal lot. This is, in fact, legal lot.
You had this come up last year, didn't you?
Yeah.
We did.
not with this program, but with the other one, yes, yes, we did. Yeah.
The building set on a corner or something like that.
There's a building right over here, yeah.
So can I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
If I own a building at 123 Sesame Street,
Mhm.
and there are 4 businesses in 123 Sesame Street, 123 Sesame Street can apply for one minor improvement grant per fiscal year.
Correct.
And the next year, 123 Sesame Street, so somebody else within that building could apply if and only if the other one is all finished.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Moved.
Second.
Second. Any more discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Passes unanimously. Anything else for the good of the order?
Just make sure you hand these in before the end of the month. You can do it tonight if you would like. That's your acknowledgement of the city council rules. It's in your agenda packet on page 22.
From the workshops.
Can you grab page 22?
Okay. Anything else? I declare this meeting adjourned.
I never had a paper.